We have lots to discuss here in today's video, including some offseason trade speculation regarding teams like the Montreal Canadiens, the Detroit Red Wings, Vancouver Canucks, New York Rangers, New York Islanders, and the Philadelphia Flyers. Plus, we have an update as well on the potential future of Brock Nelson. Will he remain with the Avalanche or re-sign, or will he be on the move in free agency? Plus, we have the schedules been released for the Memorial Cup and the Battle of Junior Hockey Supremacy in Canada. Plus, we have a big announcement coming soon here for the San Jose Sharks regarding their arena. Lots of updates from the Stanley Cup playoffs, including Jets and Stars Game 6 tonight. Plus, the Leafs have conquered some of their demons and forced a Game 7 with a big win last night over the Panthers. All that and more coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have lots to discuss here in today's video. Let's start first with some big updates from the Stanley Cup playoffs. Of course, last night was a massive Game 6 in the state of Florida featuring the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Florida Panthers, and it looks like the Toronto Maple Leafs may have exercised at least some of their demons. I know a lot of people had them written off, thought they were probably going to lose after a disastrous, embarrassing Game 5. I know I was somewhat in that camp too. I wasn't really sure what to expect of Toronto, thinking the way they looked in Game 5, it's hard to imagine they can beat this Panthers team, the defending champions, twice in a row to win the series. And well, they haven't done that yet. But they did have a very impressive Game 6 to bring it back to Toronto and force Game 7. They get a 2-0 win. Joseph Woll gets the shutout, even though he didn't really have the most work by any means. Probably one of the lighter shot totals for a shutout for him in his career. 22 shots for Florida, only 17 for Toronto. Austin Matthews scores a goal for the very first time in his career in second round of the playoffs, which is a big thing for him. I mean, it looked like he was going to have a great shot. He kind of whiffed on it a little bit, and it still went through the legs of Bobrovsky and into the net. So huge goal for Matthews. So that's a big part of it. Max Pacioretty comes through again, another clutch goal. And then the Panthers were not able to get the comeback. The Leafs end up closing it out and force Game 7. So that was a gutsy effort. They had to bounce back, and they did. They didn't look super nervous like they did in Game 5. So either, like I said, that's part of the demons, but a big Game 7 at home is something that is going to be huge for them as well. It's going to be a massive test. Even if they don't win, the fact that they picked themselves off the mat, won Game 6, forced Game 7, still makes it the furthest playoff run, deepest playoff run this team has gone on with this core group of players. So definitely, you don't want to have an embarrassing loss to end your season. So we'll see what happens. The Leafs are going to have a chance to do something very special in front of their fans. It's either going to be absolute elation, and that city is going to be having a massive party and making it to the third round for the first time in a long, long time, and the first time with this core group of players, or it's going to be devastation after forcing Game 7 and then ultimately falling afterwards. So either way, it's going to be a great night of hockey. We look forward to that tomorrow night. Tonight, of course, we have Jets versus Stars, game number 6. I'm recording this video in the first intermission after a scoreless opening period. A lot of heavy hearts tonight. We got the news earlier today that the father of top-line centerman for the Winnipeg Jets, Mark Scheifele, unexpectedly passed away through the night last night. So the team woke up to this news here this morning. Very sad news. Early in the day, they said they weren't sure what this was going to mean for Mark Scheifele, if he was going to play or, kind of what he would want to do. Scott Arniel, after learning of this news, had left the rink to go back and spend some time with Scheifele. Arniel knows a bit about this, having lost his own father a few years ago, so he can speak to this from personal experience, what it's like to lose your dad, for one. And secondly, he was an assistant coach way back with the Rangers when Marty St. Louis lost his mom towards the end of his career during that playoff run. So he's seen this before, both from a coaching standpoint and personal. I mean, I know personal was a little bit different scenario, but still, a great support person for Mark. And certainly, Scheifele's been with this team a long time. The first draft pick when they came back to Winnipeg, he's been there and been a big piece for them. And we know that the parents are heavily involved. They have a lot of mom and dad's trips. It's like a lot of the other players know Brad Scheifele, fairly well, but around him enough. And so, it's obviously nothing like Mark's experiencing, but, to some degree, they're not only sad for Mark and what he's going through, but, this is a member of the Jets' little kind of family in their community that's not with them anymore. So they're trying to rally around and hopefully win this one for Mark and for his dad tonight. I know Dallas Stars fans started something that was really nice as well. Not even something that they had to do, but some of them started doing where he wears number 55, doing $55 donations to the Jets Foundation in honor of what Mark's going through right now. So it's a great gesture as well on them. This sounds like a lot of good people in the Dallas hockey community wanted to be supportive to Mark, even though he's on the opposing team, which is just really classy and very supportive. So that's great to see. I think the entire hockey world can commend you for the great gesture. So certainly wishing Mark Scheifele the best. Thoughts are with them. I hope he's got it in him to score a big goal for his dad tonight. If he does, I'm sure it's going to be emotional, especially if it's even more so if it's a game winner or something of that nature. But I think we're all Scheifele fans tonight. At least I certainly hope so. Some other news around the league. Junior hockey is kind of slowly coming to a close. We have 2 out of 3 league champions. We're only waiting on the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League, or Quebec Maritime Hockey League, I should say. Being a fellow Maritimer, I should know that. They changed the name of the league here just recently. But the Western League has been determined. The Medicine Hat Tigers are the league champions, so they're heading to the Memorial Cup. Of course, that team you would know from upcoming potential superstar player Gavin McKenna, who was on Team Canada to World Juniors, expected to be the first overall pick in next year's draft, still a year away from his draft eligibility. Caden Lindstrom, who was a high pick in the top 5 last year to the Blue Jackets, missed the bulk of the season, but has been playing here lately in the playoffs and is certainly looking good. He had 4 points in 4 games and for what he was able to contribute there. So another name to watch. In Ontario, of course, no big surprise. The London Knights win the league championship here yet again. Of course, it's led by a few prominent prospects there, like Easton Cowan, Sam Dickinson, Haltonen. Like, they have a great group there in London. And, of course, Captain Denver Barkey. And then in the Quebec League, both the teams in the final are going to be going to the Memorial Cup, which is how and why they were able to already have the schedule done up in advance, because Rimouski is the host team. They are in the final against the Moncton Wildcats. So, obviously, whenever the league that's hosting, they also have the runner-up obviously participate as well if the host team is the league champion. So we know that either Rimouski as the host are either going to be there as league champions if they can come back and close out Moncton, which is a challenge, but or they'll be the host team and they'll also be the runners-up. So Moncton actually had a 3-0 series lead. They lost game number 4 in Rimouski the other night. Tonight, back in Moncton at the Avenir Center for game 5, 3-1, and Rimouski was able to win again. So Moncton has not been able to close them out. So we don't know who's going to be the league champion, who's going to be the runner-up. Either way, they're both going to the Memorial Cup. The first game will kick off on Friday, May 23rd, which will feature the host Rimouski Oceanic against the Medicine Hat Tigers. So lots of big names and top prospects going to be in that tournament. I highly recommend you check it out. Of course, Moncton's top prospect and star, Caleb Desnoyers, who's expected to be a top 10 pick in this year's draft, possibly a top 5 or 6. Hard to say, depending on who you ask. Some people have him as high as 5 or 6. Some have him, 7, 8, 9, 10 in that range. But either way, he's a phenomenal two-way player. Going to be a really good-looking hockey player in the NHL by the looks of things. So certainly lots of big names to keep an eye out for that tournament getting started at the end of next week. Of course, World Championships are going on right now between Sweden and Denmark as well. Lots of big names over there for Team Canada, like we've seen Macklin Celebrini getting a chance to play with Sidney Crosby. Nathan McKinnon's over there as well. A lot of players are participating in the World Championships this year because they want to make sure they're involved with their countries for next year's Olympics. So certainly if you haven't been checking that out, certainly recommend you do so. If you live in Canada like I do, you can catch most of the action on TSN. Now, as I mentioned as well, another big update expected to come here anytime from the San Jose Sharks, but I know there was some I'm not really sure it was overly concerning or overly serious, but the lease for the San Jose Sharks with their arena, the SAP Center, was coming close to being due. And there was some concern at some points that they may have difficulty kind of getting a new lease put together. There was, I think, some minor thoughts about relocation. It wasn't really ever close or serious. And if they were having any chance to relocate, they weren't going to go far by the sounds of things. But if anybody thought that was an option, you can rest easy. It sounds like they're set to announce a new 25-year lease on the SAP Center. Of course, it's not exactly a brand new arena by any means, to make sure that the building is in good standing and able to withstand that lease and fulfill all the obligations and everything it needs. Expect part of that new lease agreement to have extensive renovation budgets and everything built into it as well from the city. So certainly it sounds like the Sharks are staying in their arena. It's going to get a lot of upgrades, a lot of renos, and to make sure it's up to date and can withstand that long-term solution. At the end of that lease, I would suspect that before they're at the end of it, that they're probably going to be looking at building a new arena. I would think at that point, but it's hard to say. Some arenas just keep getting renovated, where some seem to build new ones, and obviously very, very expensive in the current market. Now, as I mentioned, lots of trade speculation around the NHL we want to get into. Start with the Detroit Red Wings. Now, of course, we know the Red Wings were a team that certainly fell short this year. Took a step back instead of taking a step forward. Lots of speculation about what they might do. We heard comments from Steve Yzerman at the end of the season. Certainly sounding like he and Dylan Larkin had difference of opinions on what they needed to do at the deadline, which wasn't a whole lot, which I know upset the team. But I think Yzerman maybe didn't feel like they had kind of combination of not earned a big move, and at the same time, because of the prices to do it, it just didn't seem to make sense for him at the time, not having the confidence it was going to be a big enough of a difference. But certainly lots of speculation about what they might do here going forward. We know there's a good chance Patrick Kane resigns, but there's also been some other players, veteran players, that could be available from other teams. They might want to bring in some more leadership, some more veteran scoring. Max Bultman, who covers the Red Wings as a beat reporter, has linked the team to a couple of guys, both in the state of New York, one with the Rangers, one with the Islanders. We know for sure one's likely to be available, and I don't know for sure he would go to Detroit, but makes you think maybe. And of course, the other, at this point, hasn't been necessarily linked to being traded, but we know it's a possibility, especially with the new regime coming in to work with the Islanders as that team goes through some transition there. But Max Bultman has linked the Red Wings to possibly being interested in winger Chris Kreider of the Rangers or Anders Lee, captain of the New York Islanders. Now, I think, like I said, we don't know who the new Islanders GM is going to be. We don't know the direction of the team, because we're going to talk about Noah Dobson here a little bit as well, but potentially being a target for Montreal or some other teams. And I think a lot of the future of that club really boils down to what the ownership group thinks of the team and what kind of direction they, depending on who they hire to be their GM or president or whatever, they're going to have to see a vision of where this team needs to go. And if they're sold on the idea of maybe selling off a few more veterans and kind of rebuilding here a little bit, then maybe we see a little more turnover than we may have thought. We don't know, right? It's hard to say. But, Anders Lee is a guy who a long time ago was a 40-goal guy, has been more of a, good leader, but more of like a 20-goal guy here more recently, getting near the end of his contract. Chris Kreider, different kind of player. Obviously, Kreider, has a good amount of speed. Certainly, it was, a lot of people think in New York, the Rangers last year, that he kind of quit on the team a little bit. And guys like him and Zibanejad, after everything that was from how the front office was handling things, kind of weren't really putting the full effort forth. So it's expected that both those guys be available. Like I said, very different kind of players, different, not greatly different when it comes to their contracts, mind you, but I don't know that either would have a huge price tag. I think more than anything, if we see either of those guys moved, it's going to be more so to get the cap space and to start moving forward. So it might not be a huge price, but it's somebody who I guess could come in with some leadership, some veteran experience, who do have a history of, being a decent scorer. But again, I'm not really sure exactly all what Steve Yzerman is going to do. My concern, if you bring back Kane, you get some other pieces on your team that are veterans, you bring in more veterans. Like, you don't want this team to be too old. You don't want them to be too slow, So I don't know. We'll see. But according to Max Bultman, they are looking to add some players that kind of fit this description. So we'll see what happens with Steve Yzerman in Detroit. There was a Canucks recommendation for trade. This kind of comes more from the fan base. A Canucks blogger had suggested that they consider trading Connor Garland. And I've talked about this last week after the interview he did with Rick Dollywall on Donnie and Daly show. And Garland sounded very non-committal to me about re-signing. We know he's near the end of his contract. And if he's not going to re-sign, you don't want to have a bunch of players leave and not get anything in return. Just from an asset management standpoint, I suggested they consider trying to move him, find another winger or a comparable player, another player who can help this team that can be with them a little bit longer. And this one made a good suggestion. Obviously, we know Garland has spent a lot of time being coached by Rick Tocchet between his time in Arizona and his time in Vancouver. Perhaps he would like to continue that. And, we know Tocchet really likes Garland. Maybe he could be a fit for the Flyers. Now, I recommend it maybe having a package start with Garland, acknowledging that they'd probably have to add a couple of more pieces to it to see if they might be able to pry away a guy like Owen Tippett, who comes with a scoring ability, a longer-term contract, some size, and might be a good type of player to add to the Canucks mix. Obviously, Garland has not have size at all. He's one of the smaller players in the league, but he plays a very tenacious game for what he has, physically to offer. So, again, I understand the sentiment to trade Garland if he's not going to stay. Makes sense. I don't know if they can pry Tippett out of Philadelphia. I don't know that I'd call him an untouchable. I don't know if he's that big of an important piece to them, but at the same time, he was the main piece that came over when they traded longtime captain Claude Giroux to the Florida Panthers before Giroux's free agency when his contract was expiring a few years ago. So I know he has earned himself a long-term deal there. Hard to say if they would make that deal. I can see a Tocchet in Philly maybe having interest in Garland. Not sure if they can pry Tippett away or what else they'd have to add to have a shot at making that happen. So I don't mind the fit. I just don't know if they have what it takes to match it up. Hard to say. And there was an interesting conversation as well between Montreal media, including Sean Starr and Marco D'Amico, about could Noah Dobson be a target for the Montreal Canadiens this offseason. We know that Ken Hughes and the Montreal GMs is after what they've accomplished this year, they got in the playoffs. They didn't obviously have great success, lost in the first round, early to Washington, but they had major progress this year. So you definitely would think that you're going to want to see them build upon that and add a couple more pieces if they can to try to take that another step next year to not only squeeze into the playoffs on the last day of the year, but be a little bit more solid in your playoff positioning, have a better chance at getting out of the first round, taking that step forward. And a guy like Dobson could be a major target for them. Now, the whole premise here is wondering if with the Islanders going through a regime change, if they will go more the direction of a rebuild. That's kind of what they're wondering here and why they think he may come available. Now, even if they don't do that, I wouldn't be shocked to find out that they would consider trading him. It was a bit of a down year for Dobson. I know there's at times, it's that love-hate relationship between what he gives you offensively versus what he doesn't always give you defensively. I know he seems to be a little bit of a whipping boy from the fan base. So I'm not sure how, obviously, the new general manager and management team are going to feel about Noah Dobson. But I can understand Montreal's interest. He's got good size, good skating, big right shot D with good offensive instincts to be on their top pair. Like, to me, he'd be a great addition. He's going to need a new deal. After doing a short-term deal last time, he's probably want to go long-term this time. They have pieces they could offer up to the Islanders. We know that they've done a pretty good job at adding to their prospect pool here lately. Obviously, bringing a guy like Dobson in is going to probably box out one of their right-hand prospect D, so whether it's Reinbacher or Mailloux. So they probably would be willing to include one of those guys for sure. Would they include a guy like a Michael Hage? Or they have multiple first-round picks this year. Would they include those? The Islanders are already picking at number 1 overall. Would they want one or two of those mid-round or middle of the first-round picks? I think 16 and 17 that they have. So some combination of all that might be something to lure him away. But at the end of the day, like I said, the whole premise of this was kind of basing it on the idea that they're probably going towards a rebuild, but we don't know that yet because we don't know who the new management team is going to be, and we don't know what direction they're going to go in. I think it's fair to say, when they traded Brock Nelson, it kind of started to send some signals, but that was a Lou Lamoriello move. What was Lou's plans moving forward, we don't know, and we may not ever find out. So it's going to be kind of interesting to see what they do, because this is going to be a team, to me, with the Islanders that a lot of people are going to probably speculate on here in the coming days and weeks before we kind of have a better idea of where they're heading, because we don't know. And when you don't know and there's a big question mark, that's when it raises questions and gets people talking. So we will see what happens, but could Noah Dobson be on the move? It would make sense that Montreal might at least try. We'll see if they can be successful or not. Let me know your thoughts on today's news and rumors down in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, of course, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with the latest news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time.